Hello and welcome to Dave's Guitar Lessons. In this lesson we're going to be looking at getting you started with improvising. I've been requested by a few people to do a lesson on improvisation and how to get started improvising when you're first getting going at playing lead guitar. So we're just going to go through a few things here about how I approach improvisation and just how you can implement a few things into your playing so it doesn't just sound like you're playing a scale up and down, but you are actually coming up with ideas and making musical statements and phrases. So if you could do me a favour and please hit that subscribe button below so you can keep up to date with all the videos as I upload them. And there's also a backing track in the description box below which you can get for free at my website, so just follow the links there and you'll get a free backing track. So for this lesson I've just knocked up a quick backing track which is just to two chords. It's just going from a G major to an E minor, which they are relative to each other, so relative major and minor. If you want to find out a bit more about relative minors and majors, then you can go to the video lesson which is linked in the top corner, where I explain all about putting chord structures together and about relative minors and majors. Now the scale we're going to be using is the G pentatonic major scale or the E minor pentatonic scale. They both contain the same notes, so I just wanted to use this backing track with just a G major to an E minor so you can get the idea of how this would sound in both a minor context and a major context. So we're going to go to the guitar neck now and get started with this quick lesson on improvisation. So in this lesson we're not looking at techniques and licks and tricks or whatever you want to call them and anything fancy in this lesson. We're looking at phrasing and how to make your improvisation sound more musical. Now I do hope that you already know the pentatonic scale that we're going to be using for this lesson, but if you don't, I'm just going to quickly go through the notes of it now. If you do already know it, feel free to skip ahead. So we're going to be starting on the 12th fret on the lower E string, then to the 15th fret lower E string, then A string 12 to 14, D string 12 to 14, G string 12 to 14, B string 12 to 15, and then high E string 12 to 15 as well. Now you notice there sometimes I use my little finger to reach the 15th fret note, sometimes I use my third finger. It's just preference, whichever one you feel most comfortable with. So the first thing I want to discuss when it comes to improvisation, and to make it not sound just like you're playing a scale up and down, you want to actually pick out some little phrasing ideas. So I'm going to give you a couple of little phrasing ideas in this lesson, but this is where you come up with your own patterns. So it is literally just that, is you're coming up with little patterns. So I'm going to say that first of all, let's go 15th fret on the high E string, then to the 15th fret on the B string, then to the 12th fret high E string. See, straight away that doesn't sound like it's just playing a scale. If I did it more scalistic, all we've done is change one note in the pattern to change the order of it a little bit. And already that sounds like a little musical phrase or statement. I'd then do the exact same thing on the string above, so following the scale pattern of course, so you're going to go 15th fret on the B string, 14th fret on the G string, and then down to 12th fret on the B string. Now if you put those two parts together just to see how they sound, it should sound like this. So that's our first idea. We're just going to stick to that idea for now. What you want to do when you improvise is to have a basis of an idea, something like that, but then to feed upon that idea. So rather than just playing exactly the same, you might want to put little rhythmical elements to it. So there's no reason why you can't go. Straight away that sounds much more musical. And all I did there was play the first note, I think it was twice. 3 times, so I did it twice, a little pause, then the third time, and then finish the phrase. Little things like that. I could do that on the next part as well. So straight away I've made that one little pattern sound a bit more musical. You can also get into your notes in a bit of a different way. I've quite liked doing this where instead of just playing that first note, I'll actually start by playing the E note on the 12th fret of the high E string first, so it'll be. And again, all I've done is add one more note into that musical passage, but that's still the same. Just makes it sound a bit different. You could also maybe even slide into that exact note, so. Straight away it sounds much more like a guitar solo. Now at this point I also want to touch upon a subject that comes up quite often with improvisation, which is call and answer. Now you might have heard of this before, but it really is a very useful technique and tip to use when you're getting started improvising. So the idea of a call and answer is you make some form of a musical statement or a phrase, or almost like you're saying something, and then your next phrase is replying to that. So you could actually do that with literally just the lick that we've gone through, so just the phrase. So your call or your question, then your answer. You see, so straight away we're trying to get into the idea of having a question, then an answer. So something and then a reply or a response to that thing. So I'm just going to put the loop on again, and I'm just going to do some call and answer ideas, but literally only using that little pattern that we've gone through so far. So the next thing I want to mention is about another way of thinking when you're doing your solos. It's a good idea to try and get, for want of a better term, your money's worth out of each of your patterns and each of your phrasing ideas. So one thing that I've noticed when I watch people and I teach people how to improvise is they will tend to find that they'll come up with quite a few different ideas, but that's all they are, is they'll just do one idea and then do another idea and then do another idea. They won't really get their, they won't really utilise the ideas they've come up with very well. So for example, you could easily start off playing what we did there. But then what a lot of people will do is then suddenly go, right, I've got another idea. So they'll think to themselves, right, I've done my idea, now I'm going to move on to another idea. But there's no reason why you can't get a bit more out of your first idea. So you could actually, you know, like I say, use some of these ideas, change rhythmically what you're doing. I got a lot of mileage out of that one little idea before I even started thinking about my next idea. So what that can tell you is to try and use your ideas to their full extent. So you can use one idea for a short amount of time, then move on to another idea, but then come back to your first idea. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So I'm going to give you another little musical phrase that I've come up with, like something that you can build upon for your improvisations. Again, we're not sticking to just a scalistic kind of run or anything like that, because that's when it starts to sound more like a scale than improvisation. So what we're going to be doing is taking notes from the scale, and we're going to take the 14th fret on the D string, pull off to the 12th fret on the D string, or you can just pick both those. Again, it's up to you. You can get a lot of mileage out of this. Then it's going to go back to the 14th fret, and then we're going to go down to the G string 12th fret. So it's going to be 14, 12, back to 14 on the D string, and then down to 12 on the G string. And we can see what kind of mileage we can get out of that as well. So I'm just going to put the loop on again so you can hear how that phrase sounds over the backing. And I'll see if I can improvise with just that phrase and see what I can do with it. So I'm going to play over the loop again now, but this time I'm going to utilise both of the phrasing ideas, both of these little patterns. And you'll see that what I'm doing tends to sound a lot more controlled, because I'm not having to quickly think of new ideas on the spot. I'm basically just using two simple ideas and I'm just varying how I play them. So I might use a few different techniques like slides, or add a couple of different notes from the pentatonic scale. So when I'm doing that lick, for example, there's no reason why I can't suddenly go to one of the other notes in the scale. But I'm always keeping in mind though that call and answer. So I'm asking a question, then I'm answering it. So I mostly use just those two ideas there, but I really made a point of doing the call and answer. So I asked a question, I answered it. Now what tends to happen when you get better at playing lead guitar is that you can mix up using your phrases then by putting in some chops or some form of guitar licks, and you know, the fancy stuff. So for example, if you had a lick that went something like, there's no reason why when you get better at doing this kind of improvisation, you could start throwing in some of those little bursts and little, I suppose more your technical stuff. Now one last little tip that I'm going to give about starting with improvisation and to use these scales in more of a musical way is to use your spaces. Now what I've noticed from years of teaching is when people start improvising, they'll tend to just keep playing, and they'll keep playing and keep playing. Now something that I find really helps me is to try and take a breath. So when I need to take a breath, I'll stop. A saxophone player can't just keep playing. They have to stop to breathe. So a good tip that I started to implement in my playing was, if I needed to breathe, I'd stop playing. And it ended up making my solo sound again more controlled and just much nicer, and the improvisations just seemed to be just more fitting and just sound a bit more tasteful. So just to recap, first of all, it's get comfortable with the scale. Then it's get used to changing the order of the scale and making up little phrases and patterns, so we're not just making it sound like you're going up and down a scale, you're changing a few things of the scale. And like we said, that little pattern that we've done first, that one, that's 3 notes. So it's amazing what you can get with just 3 notes. So make sure when you're improvising you've got a few different ideas that you're going to draw upon and go between those ideas, but make sure you keep coming back to those ideas. Always try and keep in mind call and answer, so you're asking a question and then you're answering that question. Use spaces, so make sure there's room, gives your solo room to breathe, and don't be afraid to add in some of the techniques that you're learning or that you already know. So if you know how to string bend, don't be afraid to add some string bends. If you're getting used to legato or alternate picking, don't be afraid to put in some of those techniques, but just try and make sure they fit around the melodies and the improvisation that you're doing. So I'm going to play a bit of an improvisation now over the backing track, just utilising some of the ideas that we've discussed in this lesson, and we'll come to that in just a moment. So I hope you've liked this lesson about getting started with improvisation. Please hit the like button if you like the lesson, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date with all the videos as I upload them. Remember to get your free backing track by following the link in the description box below. So I'm going to leave you now with an improvisation that I've done over this backing track. Hopefully you'll be able to notice some of the ideas that I've talked about in this lesson within my improvisation. And like I said, make sure you get your backing track from the link in the description box below and have some fun improvising.